And there we go. And pop over to the main slides. Woo. So this is now live on Twitch. We've got the audio, we've got the presentations, so feel free to pass it on, or this will go up then onto the YouTube channel afterwards. So I'll get cracking today. Won't see my chat, sadly, because I have everything split into like 1,000,001 screens and I don't have that many monitors. I've only got 2. I need another. But we'll start. So, gaining access through any means, pen testing your security. For Forgers would have a better kind of grasp on the whole situation, considering the fact that they did pen testing last year. Ours got pushed back the second semester, sad times. But I gave this talk, I didn't give it to the best of my ability last year because there was a lot of stuff I could have touched more into, and there's a lot of areas that I could have went over more efficiently. And today I'm hoping to give it a little bit better of a talk, because online, being able to access a lot more of my tools and being able to use the full performance of my computer is definitely more efficient. So we'll get cracking. So warning, as a disclaimer, the HackerSoc are not responsible for you using any of this in a malicious way or manner. Thanks. As per usual, social media of the HackerSoc, social media of myself, that all goes up onto the YouTube and to the Twitch video afterwards, so if you want to grab any of them, feel free to do so. Then gaining access to a system. There's various ways to do so, and in these type of ways, there's like you have phishing attacks, hooking, physical attacks using rubber duckies, and man-in-the-middle attacks. Now, a lot of these could be roped all into one, but for the most part, we'll kind of divide them out a little bit more separately, and then we'll go from there. So, phishing attacks. Phishing attacks are very common. You'll probably get one 9 times a day from in your spam emails, or maybe once in a blue moon you might actually get a proper one sent to your main one. So these attacks would be anything from your Netflix needs to be updated, or your bank details on your phone. So you get different types of phishing attacks. Depending on what they are, they might have a different name. So SMS phishing would be smishing, phishing normally, and then, like, of course, you've got the other stuff. Hooking. Hooking is notoriously bad for people, especially when they're using websites, because using passwords and stuff like that on websites while you're being hooked is kind of very, very bad, because you can have them input passwords, details, emails, and other such stuff like that, and you can then convert that system then into a zombie afterwards once you've grabbed them. The best tool I've used, a tool I've used for it, I don't know if there's any more realistically at the moment, would be BeefXS. I did it last year. I hooked myself as a demonstration purposes. It is very, very good. It's very, very simple to use. The old versions of Kali had it pre-installed, and it was absolutely brilliant. And great demonstration piece if you ever wanted to just prove a point with people. But or you could just use it as a third year, fourth year project on the simplicity of setting up like stuff like that, or even just as a generalized talking point. Physical attacks. So, most common thing I think I hear of when I hear physical, I hear rubber duckies, considering the fact Tiernan made one out of an Arduino. I had a few last year, courtesy of Mark Lane, and like most people know what they are, and if you don't know what they are, I'll go into detail with them when I go through this. Man-in-the-middle attacks. The point between the victim and the service. These are very, very common. They are easy to avoid, but at the same time, try not to get caught out by them as it stands, because it could cause issues, realistically. Um, but yeah, so you have, and then social engineering. Social engineering, it's very popular with people. It's a very popular topic when speaking about the industry. Definitely social engineering goes up there on one of the higher levels. I'm not sure if it's allowed to be done by third and fourth years anymore as an actual project, because at the end of the day it affects people. It's not. Okay, so there you go. Don't do it. But it's very, like, there's great videos on it about a woman sitting there, plays audio of a child crying, and was nearly able to social engineer the person very simply, because it's humans, like, it's humans kind of predefined need to, like, help and to help someone who's in need, so that affects that people prey on. So phishing attacks. This was one I pulled up from, I don't know, a while ago. It was a Netflix scam. Um, where people were sent emails. Like, click here to verify your account, and you'd see the HTTPS login netflix.activate.com/file/login.php. That would not be Netflix's ability and would not be Netflix's main website to go on to, uh, especially not from them. They would have their own, just go straight to your Netflix, log in and stuff like that. So always be wary of where the email comes from. Like, a simple thing is your Netflix membership is on hold. Like, very rarely that would ever happen on hold. It would either be cancelled or would not, like, you'd no longer pay for it. They'll email you asking you to restart it, but you'll never see that type of an email pop up. I've never seen one pop up personally, and I've used Netflix for a long time now, so I've never seen anything like that. If you also hover over an email, you'll be able to see what type of attack that is, what type of URL. It's quite common when you look at actual URLs. I do have an example, and I'll log into my other email account in a bit, and I'll show you. Yeah, and as you can see, even people with no Netflix gets the email. But I do have an example of this that I'll show you later. Using software to grab passwords. This software is actually available to GitHub. I will not point you to GitHub at all, because it's a very powerful software that allowed people to grab all the passwords and all the datas and run for the hills. It was this was first made light to me by the Cyber Viking. He showed me the tool, and I showed it to everyone in the class one day. It basically grabs all of the clear text passwords from your Google Chrome, grabs all your Wi-Fi information, all of the, like, anything you've kind of realistically that's stored on the system. It grabs all of that, stores it in a local file. You pull your USB out, and you could walk away with all their passwords, what Wi-Fi is to connect to, where the devices have all been located, and basically use it for that type of attack. Very dangerous, but at the same time very useful if you're deciding to be an actual pen tester and you're on an on-site attack. But just be wary that the tool doesn't work with modern versions of Windows 10, due to the fact that they've updated their security, and hooks and all that, like hook.dll, is normally spotted straight away and is prevented from being used. Hooking through JavaScript and Beef. Beef hooking is very simple. It's included in Kali. I can't remember if it's actually included now in the latest versions of Parrot OS, if that's even still being updated, to be honest. It basically works through a JavaScript that runs to the actual program itself that you get to see on your end. Very simple, very kind of, you'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. If you buried enough HTML and enough CSS on top of it, like, some would go right over the JavaScript file. Great way to get past this is just use NoScript. no JavaScript. But if you tell your if you actually had the whole thing built in a way that JavaScript would be needed to even use the website, it would kind of force that person to kind of leave that JavaScript on, and you'd be able to hook them. So I think of an example. So this is the tool. Very simple, runs locally on the system. You could probably run it through a server if you wanted to. It's very handy. So you can see it also tells you what version it is. It actually told me that this was actually a VMware version of Linux I was using, and that was my actual laptop's system at the time. So, and I was using Google Chrome. So Firefox, Chrome, Windows, Linux, all the bits and pieces I needed, and these were offline browsers to show that I no longer had access to the just manually install it. It's not included, but I know you can just grab the GitHub repo and run it that way. It's a very handy tool. But yeah, so this is how that ran. So I could actually see my offline browsers. I could see the zombies that it had hooked. And if you read more in detail, you can actually see the custom pages and all of that's in. And you could also inject stuff right to the website. So I had an online browser. It was a Linux machine. I was typing into the Linux machine all of the information. So, hello 123 456 mail, and then at gmail.com. You could actually see all of the information I was sending, and then form submitted. Username hello 1234567 at gmail.com. Password was password. Sign up. So simple stuff like that. You could actually see everything I was typing, like a keylogger, the whole way up. So even if someone realized just before they sent the email that it was a scam, by that point it was too late, because you already had all the information loaded here, and all you had to do is basically just compile it all together. And then you can also see blur, browser lost focus, focus was regained, and then lost focus. So that normally occurs when the person clicks off the website. But when I take it with a little bit more intuition, a little bit more kind of time spent onto it, you could hook it permanently and see exactly what they were doing whenever they logged off the website, and to see exactly what they were actually using their website for. So if it was work, if it was for college, even something simple as having that information, just look up where that email goes, who the email belongs to, and see what they actually have. If that email's been leaked in, say, dehashed or something like that. For practical pen testing work, very, very good, because it helps you narrow down what you need. So if you got, say, a system administrator to do that, you go in, you could then walk up to any system, use the administrator account, and there you're right onto their network, and you could perform an actual attack, if that's what they actually ask you to do. But yeah, you could have anything like that being done. This is an example of Beef here. This is just a standard Beef website, but this here was a injection that I launched onto the website. So all you do is you pick one of the options. I chose LastPass here. LastPass was then loaded onto it. You type in the email, you type in your password, and then it would all be stored onto the back end. Very dangerous, considering the fact that most people would go, oh, I'm logged out my LastPass, and wouldn't think twice about it. But if you're using LastPass, you're normally more secure as it is, so you might check to see if you're actually logged out. So going more to the physical side of stuff now again, we'll go to rubber duckies. Rubber duckies are great. You have a few types. I'll be mainly touching on the main one, the rubber ducky that you stick into a laptop. They are great. They run fairly quickly. They run first time, every time. You don't even need to think twice and it runs. How they work is they basically disguise themselves as a keyboard or a mouse, stuff that's automatically installed onto the system, and then it runs the code that way. So you can have do something simple for jokey purposes as open up the web browser and rickroll someone, or you could do something more dangerous like If it's a Linux machine, go into the Linux machine, GitHub down a tool, like pull a repository, go into that repository, and then launch the file. After it launches the file, that file would then do a lot of stuff on the system, and then upload all the data to a remote server. So it could do light and jokey stuff all the way down to really dangerous black hat level stuff. But if you have one of these, you'll normally use them for pen testing. They're very, very, very fun to use. But remember, don't do it on someone's system unless they give you strict permission to do so, because you could get a massive amount of trouble. The SharkJack. This is one of their more current tools. It was current last year. It's an SSH tool for their network. So plug it into any open RJ45 port that actually runs properly on the network, and you get access to an SSH tool either on your phone or on your laptop. You just connect right to the device, and it can be used to sniff the VLAN for any insecurities or any data or any network traffic and pull it down. And more or less you could also use it to run scripts on the actual network to grab passwords that is flowing through, or to look for weaknesses or insecurities in the actual it could be a closed gap network, so no access to the internet. So you could actually look for security vulnerabilities that would allow you to gain more privileged access. Very, very cool tool. I think they are 50 quid on Hack5, but don't quote me, I can't remember the exact pricing on it now. The OMG cable. These are very, very funny, but very dangerous. It can be connected to iPhone. Now they also have C, and they also have a Type C, and they also have just standard. I can't think of the old style of chargers now, but they have them for each style of charger. So realistically, you could pick one up for any type of phone you want. All you do is plug it in, plug the cable in. It's got an inbuilt Wi-Fi tool to access the phone. So by the time you unplug it and you're gone, the tool's already done its job, and they've got access to whatever they needed to get access. It can also, as you can see here, one of the biggest features of the tool is it can forensically erase the firmware on the system once it's done, and then fall back asleep like nothing. I don't even know what I was typing there. Like nothing was ever there. So if that is the case, I do recommend picking up a USB condom, or the USB dial blockers, depending on what you want to call it. They are great to have, considering the fact that all you have to do is just plug them in, and all it is data, power pass through, no data. For public like USB ports in, or for anyone even saying you can use their laptop to charge your phone, I do recommend just using one of them. They are safe and they are secure, and they are very, very handy to have. I know Amazon gives them out at 0 days, so whenever 0 days decides to start back up, I'd recommend picking one up if you can when you're there. So yeah, very handy tool, very, very simple to use. All it is a plug and play, and then use the device to launch your payloads. Wi-Fi pineapples. I had a lot of experience with using this over the last year. It can pull people's Wi-Fi down. It literally is so open that if your phone is walking past and it's searching for a network, it will just grab onto that network and you'll have someone connected to you. We ran this as part of the HackerSock Open Day with no connection to the Wi-Fi, of course, because there was no way for actually anyone to get affected by this. But we did notice that phones, even when we tried to secure it as much as I actually don't know about that, in all fairness, Jack, but I will look into it. But we do have so the Wi-Fi pineapple will actually just leave itself open, and people's phone will just automatically connect. It has loads of tools that allows you to grab stuff off the phone, to make fake website pages, to make fake login pages. So I'm pretty sure it has its own tools and all to grab local ones. So it could grab for example, the TU Dublin one. So when you go in and you go to log into the Wi-Fi, and you have to log in using your username and password, it could nearly copy that word from word and actually just redirect you once it was done. It's a great tool. It's more on the expensive side, so you wouldn't see many people picking one up. Very, very powerful, and like, it can capture all the data and send it back to you or keep it on your system as it's going. You could see all the logs and what everyone was doing. When it was done more locally, when we were running it more of a secure environment. So public use, I recommend don't do it, especially if you don't want jail time, because the system can basically just cause a lot of trouble, because you can see what people are doing. You could get the passwords, spoof login details, spoof the actual web page itself. There's a lot it can do. It's a very in-depth tool, and you'd have to pick one of them up to actually see what it can actually do. It's brilliant though, and very good for man-in-the-middle attacks. You can also do the same using your own Wi-Fi hotspot. If just set one up, you can nearly set it up to be an open attack with the right software. I just had a local Wi-Fi 2 connection open on my PC here, and you could just watch all the data go through. If people's phones are constantly pinging and looking for an open Wi-Fi to connect to, then if it connected to, say, a no network password on this, you'd be able to use something like Wireshark or maybe another tool to actually see what they were doing. That's even simpler again. Don't even need a piece of hardware. All you need is a laptop or a desktop with a Wi-Fi card in it, and there you go. Shodan. Shodan is a great tool. Old CEO Alan did a great talk on it for Conant, so I recommend giving that a watch. I know I use Shodan, and like, I have the actual application installed. You can apply to Shodan themselves for I think it's a student account, and it gives you their top tier account, so that you can use any piece of their software without any issues, without any hindrance to it. Just tell them that you're a student, give them the student email, and they'll attach it right to your account, and then you'll just sign up as you normally would. So, using Shodan to gather information. So this is Google itself, Google's homepage. You can see the ports that are active. So this would be great if you were going to do a pen test on a website. So you can see what ports are currently active. See where it goes to. So you could see move permanently. To what location it's sent to. You could also see what encryption, security contact for the website, acknowledgement, so they actually do have a bug hunter, and loads of other stuff. So it's a great tool. You can see what's being broadcast over the website, so if malware or any types of rats are broadcasting themselves, you'll actually see their unique IP address and what style they're going out, TCP or UDP. Be aware, if you do click into any of these and try to gain access, that is actually illegal to do so, so just be very careful on what you actually do. Doing this is fine, especially if it results in a vulnerability being found in their system, but just be forewarned that that's not always the case. So, Shodan, finding vulnerabilities. This is a vulnerability list from a while back, so don't worry. But basically what all this is, it shows all the vulnerabilities in the website, what it can be contributed to, so PHP, and a lot of PHP in the background, and OpenSSH, and a lot of other vulnerabilities. PHP normally gives a lot of vulnerabilities due to the fact it's constantly being updated and constantly stuff being deprecated out of use. But just be mindful to always research what the vulnerability is. If you're doing a practical attack, make sure to research what the vulnerability is and research how to actually exploit it properly before just saying, oh, you have 1,000,001 vulnerabilities. If most of these might just be low level stuff. Maybe a level 1 or a level 2. You might have maybe a level 6 or 7. And that might be something to look into. But just remember, go to a CVE checker and check what the CVE is. So yeah, and please keep in mind to report it to the company, even if it's only a level 6 or 7 and it's not a level 10, still report it, because someone might be exploiting it, or might be exploiting a vulnerability in the system that might be, like, might gain them access to, say, send themselves free products, or maybe to cross-site script the website, or to do other stuff. So just keep that in mind. I did have actually... Oh, whoops. Slide. Oh, for God's sake. Wrong button. Yeah, fine. But yeah, so you do have the ability to do this. I was actually meant to add in a few extra slides to this. I guess I didn't. Should prevent the view, and then... Oh, I'm after... I can't believe this. Want to come back? There we go. And I'll take that. I will present that slide. I've completely broken it there, haven't I? Yep. Great. So, I guess I'm gonna just have to... Okay. Oh, I think it's frozen. There we go. So we'll look more at Linux now. Hey. So I did talk about using some of the simpler tools, and I know someone did ask me to have a look at Nmap recently. There's a lot of tools you can get, especially for pen testing. So one of them would be Nmap for scanning ports on the router. Another one would be Hashcat. There we go. I use the Windows based one because Windows actually has a more efficient way of loading in to using the GPU. Kali, surprisingly enough, doesn't have the current drivers to actually use a graphics card. I know on the modern versions of VMware Workstation, you do actually get to use on Ubuntu full access to the GPU. So if you have a 1070 or 1080 or whatever you might have, you can actually use your GPU to crack caches. That is one of the tasks I know Mark Cummins makes you do for secure not for secure program, for secure comms. You have to crack passwords with salt. So having a fast GPU to do it is very efficient. I would do it, but it means I'd have to go the whole way back through it again, and that takes fucking forever to crack passwords. So we'll just do a normal passwords ping. I don't know what my for the IP address is on this, so bear with me 1 minute. Network adapter. I forgot my IPs in my tables. Whoops. Ah well, I should be able just to scan normally then. I think it's in the 10 range in anyways. So Nmap allows you just to basically scan all the ports on a Wi-Fi router. I could do it on my own system. CMD. So just a simple attack would be Nmap 192.168 and 12.1. So this would be the this would be one of the actual ports. Yeah, because I'm doing it on a local machine. It's not done on an actual attack basis. It's actually done for educational purposes, so it should be fine. So normally you can just use Nmap to like scan the network. I've forgotten all my commands all of a sudden, and I've forgotten all my IP addresses because I'm an idiot and I forgot to set this up ahead of time. Virtual network editor. This should tell me all my IP addresses. So you can see throughout Nmap's abilities, you can see all of the abilities that it actually has. So list scan, ping, tree all hosts is online, so skip host directory. So you've got all of the different different abilities that can be added onto it. So here we go. So we can see host only and NAT. So this would be that was set to NAT, so I take it the other one is set to host only, so I can figure out which one is which. Oh, both of them are. Okay. That's great to know. So each one depends, because I already have this all set up on a local machine, so I normally would be able to scan properly. I'm not sure why I can't actually ping anything. I don't actually know the IP addresses, that's the bloody reason why. This is what I get for not checking ahead of time. There we go. So all 1,000 scan ports are closed. So it is up, but all the ports are closed, which is right, because it is literally just a testing machine that I don't have anything running on. So for simpler stuff, like if I was actually using if I was using a server box, like my actual server box, which I should be fine to use because it belongs to me. 197. And then I do Nmap. There you go. And paste. So a more efficient Nmap scan, so you can actually see it's now properly setting the Nmap scan to see what's on the actual box. So you can see that Nmap is able to see more or less the ports that are active on the system, and being able to check something as simple as like an Nmap, like what ports are active, is a great confirmation just to see if the website or any of the active ports on a Shodan system is available. So you can kind of see I've got SSH and I've got port 80 open. These are the two ports that I actually do have open because I'm currently running a website and I currently have the SSH into the box. So that's correct. And I'm not broadcasting SQL database or anything like that because it doesn't need to be. So you can also see that the report came back. I'm using a Contabo server, which is exactly correct. You can see all the information that's attributed to it, and yeah. So more or less, this is Nmap. It's great for using in an actual attack, but as I said, at the end of the day, just be careful when you're using it on college campus because they frown upon that because they don't want you to see active IP addresses and who's actually connected. But yeah, for the most part, I think that's realistically it. Being at home, it kind of sucks because I'm not able to see what everyone wants to see and show off exactly what I want to show off because I prefer to do it in person most of the time. I do have access to my system so I could do it, but of course I can do the same in college with VMs and stuff like that. And with everyone being on different timetables and no one being around or being able to see, it's very hard to show off what you really want to do. But for the most part, for anyone who hasn't got Linux set up yet or hasn't got Kali or a version of Kali at least set up, I do recommend setting one up. Do set up your Kali box or even use your Ubuntu box, and then from Ubuntu set up maybe pull down a few scripts, because Ubuntu, surprisingly enough, if I go to, let's grab here, go to settings, and then I go to display, you can actually see the amount of graphics memory you can actually divide over, so it can actually use your graphics card, where if I do the same in Kali and I go to display, it doesn't have that ability at the moment, since Kali is kind of more or less outside of the working range of what Ubuntu is. Ubuntu was updated a lot quicker than I'd say Kali was, and I haven't heard about them actually adding the GPU support in for VMware. So unless you're using your graphics card directly with that, no. As far as I know, it doesn't. I don't think Kali or Parrot use GPU pass-through at the moment. I think the only one that does is Ubuntu and maybe a few other larger distributions. But you might be able to get around it if you can actually set up the graphics drivers manually. I haven't spent much time trying to do that myself personally, but I definitely think if you want to have a look at it, just go in and set one up, because if I launch, I think this is an actual VM for it. Yep. So you can actually give a large amount of RAM, VRAM as it is, depending on what you actually have in your graphics card. I only have 8, so it's giving me 3 as an option, but I think that's because I'm running 2 other VMs. Yeah. Yeah. If you're looking for GPU power, unless you're like, here's a Windows based one here. Hello. Okay, that's weird that Windows one won't load. Here's a Windows one here, so I can actually give it the full 8 gigs. And it actually does work, because I have tested in the background using other tools. So, but at the end of the day, you're still sacrificing CPU cores, RAM, and stuff like that. So I do recommend, if you're going to be using GPU accelerated tools, definitely go in and use either Jobu, or if you have a desktop PC with multiple spare SATA ports on it, plug in maybe an external hard drive with Linux or something built into it, and then just boot from that whenever you want. On laptops, you're going to have to do it partition on a partition basis. So that's a little bit more tricky. I do know Sean is probably one of the better options for asking about it. I'm not. But yeah, there's a few other bits and pieces you could kind of add on to any of your systems, but for the most part, use dual booting where you can, and use Windows based tools like Hashcat Windows for the GPU support where you can. Everything nearly has a more or less a Windows based counterpart if you can find it. If there's not one there, you kind of just sadly have to deal with the Ubuntu. So just use Ubuntu and you'll have your GPU there. And if you can't use Ubuntu, sadly you'll just have to suffer with the fact that you have to use Kali. But yeah. But yeah, that's more or less it. I want just to go over a few basic small bits and pieces this week. Go over the whole how to get access. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to give talks, because it's gonna get very boring on me giving talks every week. Like I do it, like especially for fourth years and even other third years who want to give talks to get used to it. Especially considering the fact Mick gave it a whole speech about it yesterday for third years. And for fourth years, I know he's probably given you that speech before, and he's probably going to give it to you again before you start. So, if anyone wants to give talks to get the practice in, feel free to do so. We're happily enough to give over the time. Especially for later in the evening as well. If anyone wants to give talks in evening time from 6 p.m. onwards, feel free to do so. We're happy enough to give that time slot over. I know people were begging for a 6 p.m. class, so if anyone wants to do that, feel free. But for the most part, that's it. So I will put this up on YouTube so you can go back over it, see what tools I mentioned. That's the most efficient time that's ever gone off. And see what other stuff I've actually used. Ooh. There we go. But yeah, so I hope everyone does enjoy